we go. Go live. And the awkward waiting time is over. Okay, we're live. Hi, everyone. Yeah, there's always like that pause in connecting. Hello, everybody. Good to see all of you here today. I'm Marian with Etcher Lab, Etcher Studio. I'll type here in the chat. And I'm here with the wonderful Rachael Mae. If you can see and hear us okay, please type llama or something fun in the chat just to let us know that we're all good. Yeah, we got a couple of people giving you a shout out, Rachael. Lynn and Patty, like, hey, Rachael, hey.
Hey, guys.
Great. We got Vivian from Virginia. We got Patty from California. We got Janet from BC, Canada.
Oh, wow.
We got someone from Egypt. Holy wow.
That's
Llama,
gotta be late, right?
Yeah, the time difference must be something else over there. Thanks for joining us for an hour. That's dedication. That's really great.
Honestly, though, thank you.
Yeah, for real. Okay, thank you, Patty, for the llama shout out. Thank you. Um, Wonderful. Okay, so here we are on this Friday afternoon, at least if you're here in the States. Thank you again for joining Etcher today. I'm Marian, your host. I'm here with the wonderful Rachael Mae, also known as Proximate Artistry. She will be doing a demonstration for this hour today. We do these free online demos practically every day now. So please subscribe to our channel and turn on your notifications if you haven't already done so to stay up to date and be alerted when we go live. Our next one is tomorrow, Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time with Sarah Stokes, who will also be doing a watercolor demonstration doing portraits and talking about the importance of tones, timing, and technique. Okay. Oh, the chat's going now. Hello. Hi, everybody. Beautiful. Perfect. Okay. So just a couple of housekeeping things to talk about real quick before we get started. As you know, we have two websites now. We got a brand new website, etcherstudio.com, which will house all of our live demos and mini workshops and all the classes that we bring onto the platform. So if you haven't already checked that out, etcherstudio.com, and maybe sign up for the newsletter to stay up to date on all things classes. That would be great. And then etcherlab.com is our product website where you can purchase all of our products. Okay, and we got new products if you haven't already learned. We got a new portrait style etcher sketchbook as well as an accordion sketchbook. We also got a new gouache brush set now that's been like a high demand requested to have a brush set that works with gouache. And then we also have a new watercolor palette set, which is the pearlescent metallic shiny shimmery watercolors.
Ooh.
Yeah, right.
I might need to get those for myself.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. So already we've got a first customer right here. Okay, and so that's just something I wanted to bring up real quick on that. And before we get started, again, we have a live demo survey here that we'd like you guys to fill out if you have the time. It takes only a couple of minutes. You can hang on to the link until the end of the demo, and it'll just be to let me and Rachael know how we're doing today. Any comments, anything else you want to see through Etcher, please use that Google form to let us know how you feel and what you would like to see. Okay. Okay, and I think that's about it. So Rachael will be demonstrating watercolor Polaroids today, and we do have a reference photo, which is just the final painting image. So I dropped the link there in the chat. It's also in the description of this YouTube video. So if you want to go ahead and grab that real quick so that you can look at it while Rachael's doing her demonstration today, that'll help you out a lot. If you happen to be painting along, that's awesome. We'll probably want to see you post that on your social media and tag both me and Rachael.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
that would be
yeah.
Awesome.
And what you did today in today's demonstration. So that'd be super great. Okay, so I have blabbed enough. Rachael, back to you. What are we doing today? Let us know.
Awesome. So now it's my turn to blab. So we're going to be painting this guy right here. It's one of my favorite pieces that I've done. It holds a very special place in my heart. So I see that you spotlighted the video. Perfect.
Yeah, I did.
Awesome. So we're going to get this guy going. I've already made out the measurements here. So it's a 3.5 by 4 inch piece of watercolor paper. Cold pressed. I like cold pressed because it gives you a little bit more time to mess with the paints before it dries. My experience with hot pressed paper is that it dries too quickly for my liking, and I like the texture of it too. So I'll set this guy right over here for now. So I've marked out on here, it is basically 3/4 of an inch up, very, very light pencil mark. Hopefully you guys can see that. But that is where I will be putting my tape, so we get that really clean, crisp line right at the bottom, which makes it, gives it the Polaroid look. That's what we're aiming for. So I also have my mini etcher palette, which I've loaded up with like all of my favorite colors. And I love that they send along a swatch sheet. It was really fun to do that a couple weeks ago. I did that. So let me get my tape going here. So I mark the bottom, but I eyeball the rest of the framing for the Polaroid. And the tape that I'm using is just painter's tape that you can get like at any hardware store. I use washi tape occasionally, but the washi tape doesn't stick as well as I would like. Mm-hmm. And then it starts to peel, and then I don't get those clean borders that I love so much. So
right. Yeah.
So I usually tape the bottom half first. I try to do my best. Doesn't need to be perfect. It's a painting after all. Mm-hmm. And we do it for practice. I definitely have a cat hair that I just taped onto the sheet of paper. I wouldn't be surprised if one of my cats joins us during this as well. So just a heads up on that.
Yeah.
I have one sleeping behind me, but I have one that whenever she hears anyone like me talking to someone on the phone, she jumps up and joins.
There's always that one cat that does that, right? Wants to be part of everything. So
yeah, absolutely. So here I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Make sure it's nice and thin.
So someone is curious about your cutting mat that's underneath all of your stuff here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You, really quickly, while you're taping here, let us know what kind of a cutting mat this is.
So I don't know the exact brand name. I believe I just got it from either Michael's or Joann's.
Okay.
Underneath my desk is a wooden desk, and I really didn't want it to get damaged. Yeah. So I've got this cutting mat that actually has measurements and everything on it too, which is super helpful. I think I spent like $15 on it. I know you can get them off of Amazon, so definitely an option. Lifesaver for my desk.
Is it a large one?
Yeah.
Or it's a smaller size?
It measures 22 by 18. And the only reason I know that is because there's measurements along the side. So yeah.
Great.
It's a decent size. I don't really do a whole lot of big paintings. Otherwise I might have gotten a bigger one. Mm-hmm. But the size works perfect.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. No one's ever asked about my cutting mat before.
I know, right? It was that was the first question of today's demo is what kind of cutting mat. So that's great. Thank you, Patty, for asking. And then just for everyone else, if this is your first time with Etcher, if you have any questions about anything Etcher or anything about Rachel's process or her work, please type it in the chat and I'll grab those questions and ask them to Rachel throughout the demo.
Yeah, I can't see any of the chat, so I can only see me and what I'm doing like 3 times because I've got 2 screens here.
It's like a weird Inception situation.
This is pretty much what I'm seeing right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So you tape the entire piece, looks like, straight to your surface that you're working on.
Yes. Okay. Yep. And that's because often I'm a messy painter. So even though I've got like nice clean borders here, sometimes when I'm painting, the paint gets like over here or over here.
Right.
So yeah. I know there's some people, like whenever I have taped something down, I tape like everything that I don't want paint on, even if the page is like larger, simply because I'm kind of messy. So
I see. Gotcha.
And the colors that I'm using today, I've got everything is in my palette, but I also have the tubes. We got neutral tint, phthalo turquoise, which has become like one of my favorite colors. You can mix something like this, but I use this color a lot, and I've barely made a dent in this tube too, which is kind of crazy.
It's strong.
Indigo.
The
Oh
phthalo
yeah,
colors are pretty strong.
they
Okay,
are.
indigo. I'm just typing the
Indigo is my
colors in the
favorite.
chat here, just so that everyone has it in the chat and they can refer to this in case they need to know the colors.
Oh yeah, good idea. And you can use any variation of these colors too. It doesn't have to be this exact brand or these exact colors.
Mm-hmm.
So basically we're looking for, a deep blue, which would be indigo, some
Mm-hmm.
sort of yellow color. I like yellow ochre.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Prussian blue here too, but again, you don't need these colors. You could use a cobalt or you could use an ultramarine. I tend not to because I like cooler blues, and ultramarine tends to be a warmer one. So that's not my favorite. But basically, these 5 colors right here.
Do you not use
Yellow
any
ochre.
reds?
No, I'm not using any reds today.
Oh.
But for the workshop in May, I have a different color palette that we'll be using.
Okay.
So, yep. That will be, I think, indigo, crimson, a violet, and I think Prussian blue again, because I really like Prussian blue. Set those guys over there. And I am going to get my paints ready, wake them up in my palette. I use an eyedropper to drop water onto the palette, simply because I don't have a spray bottle. So, yes. I got these eyedroppers when I was back in my undergrad and was in lab all the time. They had so many of these eyedroppers, and one of the days they had a box that they were just going to toss out because they weren't used. And I was like, I'll take the box.
They're like perfect. I love
I
how
know.
long they are. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm dropping some clean water onto that. I have 2 cups of water here. Always 2 cups.
Mm-hmm.
One for dirty water, one for clean water. So my paints are starting to wake up. I also have the palette that I'm going to use right here to mix up the paints and scrap sheets. You can see that I've already started to use this one. Mm-hmm. But I always like to test my colors before I put them on the paper, just to give myself an idea of what's going on. Wet my brush. The brush I'm using is a size 8 by Silver Brush Company. It's the Silver Black Velvet brush. This is probably my most used brush. Mm-hmm. For sure. For all the painting sizes that I use, this one's a perfect size brush. Occasionally I use a size 12, but for this little guy, we're going to use a size 8. So the first thing I do in all of my galaxies is, one, I take a look at whether I need to sketch anything. So now for this piece right here, this is kind of like our reference photo. There will be some differences between the painting we're doing today and this one. But I've got an idea that I want some mountains along the bottom, but I don't think that I am going to sketch it in with a pencil or anything, simply because that area in the bottom right-hand corner is so light that I don't want any pencil lines showing through. So I'm just going to eyeball it when the time comes. But if you guys want to sketch out like a rough idea of where your skyline will be, where your mountains will be, feel free to do that. Just make sure it's nice and light. If you're heavy-handed with your pencil and then you put water over it, you're not going to be able to erase the pencil. So heads up.
That's brave to go straight into painting without sketching.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I often do that with my galaxies. I usually don't even honestly have a plan. So
right. Would you say that you're very intuitive then? Like a more of an intuitive painter rather than having like a blueprint to work from?
I think so. Sometimes I pull up some reference photos on Pinterest, which is a great place to look for ideas. But usually I have colors in mind and then I just go for it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes that creates a painting that I really don't like and that no one will ever see and it'll never see the light of day. But sometimes it works out just fine.
Yes. We all got those paintings, right?
Oh, absolutely. A drawer that I don't look at anymore. But it's good to revisit them. I try never to throw out any paintings because you learn every single time, whether you create a masterpiece that you're proud of or whether it goes in that drawer.
Right.
Yes,
The stash, the never see the light of the day drawer.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So the first thing I'm doing, I'm just wetting the entire paper. Got to make sure pretty much all the galaxies that I start with or Milky Way skies start off wet on wet. And most of my layers will be a wet on wet. It's probably my favorite technique. Everything just blends and it looks so nice. So from here, I'm going to get a little bit of yellow ochre. Sticking to my palette. I usually start off very, very light because the whole idea with galaxies is that you're going to be, and I guess with watercolor too, in general, is you're going to be building layers.
Mm-hmm.
So your first layer will not look anything like a final product. Not at all. So then I just start putting down color. I don't really think very hard about where the color is going, other than I know that I want my Milky Way to go up this way. So it's going to be just a little bit wider at the base and skinnier at top. But I usually, again, I just eyeball this. I used to put in like sketch lines for myself, but then I would be able to see the pencil line and kind of took away from the magic of it, I guess. But keeping my brush strokes nice and loose. These aren't purposeful brush strokes, not really. Those will come a little bit later. So we got a very light color, some yellow down. I'm gonna clean my brush just a bit and go in for some phthalo turquoise. I'll put that guy in here. Now that looks a little bit stronger than I want. Yeah. So we're gonna add some water to that and go for a slightly lighter color. That's a little bit better. And with watercolor too, your colors are always going to dry lighter. I think it's like the opposite rules with gouache. I don't have a whole lot of experience with gouache, but I want to.
I think gouache does a funny thing where like darker colors dry lighter and lighter colors dry darker.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So it is a bit tricky with gouache too. You have to kind of think about that when you mix your colors and your values and whatnot.
Right.
Whereas with watercolor, it's like because you're kind of starting from light to dark, they're just gonna dry lighter in general. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you can look at a painting and be like, wow, that's gorgeous. And then it dries. And you're like, what happened to all my vibrant colors?
Yeah.
Well, you just have to layer them up if you want them to be that vibrant. Or go for like more of your dye-based watercolors. These are all pigment-based. But dye-based watercolors will typically be a lot brighter. But they don't hold up as well in the sun. So, you know, give a little, take a little.
Yeah. I dye-based inks. Like I don't even know if a lot of them are light fast. I get, we can go down the rabbit hole here of like archival and like
oh God,
professional materials here to use in your work. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, we got a good group here today. We got about like 100 of you watching. This is like,
oh my God, oh, this is
yeah,
so wonderful. I didn't
it's
even.
so awesome.
I was
I
gonna be
just,
happy if like 5 people showed up. I'd
I
be
know.
like, yay!
Yeah, no, it's we got a good group here today. So again, if you're coming in later right now, if you have any questions at all throughout this 1 hour that we're doing here today, please type them in the chat. I'd be very happy to ask them to Rachel as she does her painting. Otherwise, I'll try and come up with questions that I think will be helpful to everybody.
Yeah, definitely ask away. I'm willing to talk about anything and
Yeah.
everything.
How about this as a jumping point? Because the chat right now is talking about Polaroids and like, you know,
Nice.
like what the point of a Polaroid painting is. So why don't you maybe enlighten us on how you came about Polaroid painting? Like why Polaroids? Why, why this shape?
Good question, actually.
Yeah.
So, God, like a couple of years ago, maybe like a year ago now. Time is irrelevant at this point after 2020.
Right.
But one of my friends had a Polaroid camera,
Mhm.
and I kind of wanted one afterwards because we were, taking pictures with it and like, oh, this is so cool and retro. And My brother had like a mini Polaroid camera when he was a kid that he and I used to mess around with.
Mhm.
And my friend was talking to me about it and how much she loves this camera. And I was I was new to watercolor, new into painting. And she turned to me and she was like, "Hey, it'd be really cool to do like a painting in the size of a Polaroid, right?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, it actually would be kind of cool." And then I forgot about that idea for like months and months and months. So I came across someone, to be honest, I can't even remember the name of the person, but I'm scrolling through my Instagram feed and somebody had done gouache Polaroids.
Gouache Polaroids.
Yeah, so they were doing the same concept, but with gouache instead of watercolor. Whoa, I just bumped all of you. Earthquake. But then I saw that and I was like, I need to revisit that again. So I did, and then I started doing it, and I love painting on smaller size canvases. The size that I do the most are like my bookmarks.
Yeah.
So it just kind of came about that it's a nice size canvas. Hey, it looks kind of cool. Is it gimmicky? Sure, but everybody loves a good gimmick, right?
Right.
Exactly. That's why they're gimmicks.
Right.
So that's just kind of where about, and then it just kind of like took off because
Yeah.
people were like, we really like that idea, and they're so simple to do. It's just
Right. It's just cutting it in the size, right?
right. And the
Yeah.
hardest part is just getting like that ratio at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was talking to you earlier
Yeah.
before we like started live,
Yeah.
the actual size of a Polaroid is really obscure. I don't even
Yeah.
know what it is. Something like 3.479 by whatever. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's too complicated. We're doing it 4 inches by 3.5. And
And
then
here we are.
eyeballing it to where it looks
Right.
like that would be about where the little Polaroid thingy is, right?
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. So this just really goes to show you guys that like you could like essentially make anything look sort of like it would be a Polaroid dimension
Right.
with that bottom part right there.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, so like it's funny, there's been a whole conversation here about, having a caption or a signature in the bottom space, which is the classic Polaroid thing where you label this Polaroid picture that you took, in the
Right.
moment. Yeah.
I actually haven't done that before. I always just have liked the blank space.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, occasionally I'll put like a signature right in the corner,
Hmm.
but usually I have a stamp that I guess sign, quote unquote, on the back of all my pieces. This one doesn't have it, but I actually have my stamp over here. My friend designed this for me.
That's so neat. Oh my gosh.
Yes, and then I had it printed out into an actual stamp, very well used, as you can see. But
Yeah.
I stamp all the back of my pieces with it.
That's such a great, yeah, beautiful. Like those
Yes.
little like details, those little things make it like
Oh, it's like one of my favorite
more
things that I
precious.
own. That little
Yeah,
stamp.
for sure, for sure. Okay, so go back to your painting real quick.
Yeah,
Tim asked what that darker blue color that you just put in right now. Was that the Prussian
that
blue?
this is Indigo.
Indigo. Okay.
Indigo. Yep, Indigo by Daniel Smith. This is
Hmm.
probably my most used color is indigo. It's probably featured in almost every single one of my pieces.
Hmm.
It's a good color.
Great, great.
But I am using Prussian blue. That one's Prussian blue.
Okay, okay.
Actually, while I'm waiting, I'm going to mix up a little bit more of the yellow ochre. I do have a heat embossing tool here to dry between layers to kind of speed things along.
Hmm.
But
Like
it
a
is
heat
kind of
gun.
loud.
Yeah.
So, but definitely when the biggest thing about watercolor and those that are watercolorists know is that when a layer is drying, unless you want blooms across your paper, you leave it alone. Don't
Right.
try to fix it. Leave it for the next layer. I have ruined so many paintings by being like, oh, I'm just going to touch it up right here. And then water spreads across the page. And you're like, no. And oh, it totally sucks.
Yeah, yeah. I am definitely guilty of just oversaturating my watercolors with so much water and then just
Oh
getting all
yeah.
kinds of blooms. And like it's like if it's part of your effect, if it's something that you like to incorporate in your work, like
Right.
of course go for it. But
Yeah.
yeah, the importance of layering here is that trying to really work through that temptation of not adding more while you're waiting for it to dry is part of the challenge.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, so if you want to use the heat gun tool real quick, I can mute you and then I can talk about a couple of things like your workshop real quick. You can
Sure.
mute yourself real quick and then unmute when you're ready to come back here.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
I can mute myself.
All right, awesome. And then for everyone else here, I'll answer your question, Claudio, in just a second when she comes back. But yes, Rachel will be doing a mini workshop on May 8th. And let me put the link here. I put it in earlier, but I can drop it in now since we're kind of at the sort of halfway point here. And Rachel will definitely be going through more skyscapes and this Polaroid dimension. So I think that will be a lot of fun. Oh, thank you, Diane. Yeah, I find that happens sometimes with the Zoom blocking out any kind of noise, but we'll play it safe here. So go ahead and take a look at Rachel's mini workshop coming up. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and we'll just kind of go into more detail about what Rachel's process is throughout this Polaroid inspired painting. She'll do more skyscapes, I believe, in the next mini workshop. So go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, and then if we have any other questions here. Not a whole lot of questions. Okay, Rachel, I guess we're back.
Yes, I am back.
Okay, beautiful. So we have a question here from Claudio asking, do you use your own photos to get inspiration?
Sometimes I will. Unfortunately, I haven't visited a lot of places with gorgeous skyscrapes lately. So a lot of times I go on Pinterest or even like a Google search of royalty-free landscape images, and then kind of go from there. But I haven't actually, I have maybe like one photo that I did a piece with. And I think I took it when I was in the Adirondacks. So, and then I drew, I think it was in a sketchbook somewhere. I have yet to share it because it's one of those paintings that I'm like not comfortable sharing with because I don't think it turned out that great. So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so if that link isn't working, let me know. You guys, I dropped it a couple times and I just tried it out on my end. It should be working. That link is a direct link to Rachel's class so that you can sign up. We would love to have you there. If I'm hosting that mini workshop, I again would love to see you all there again today. So someone here is saying that like Lorraine says, I would do more than one painting at the time so that there's no waiting time. Do you find that you do that at all, Rachel?
I usually do that. Yep. So that's typically, I will have like a piece here, a piece here, a piece here, sometimes a fourth one, usually 3 at a time.
Wow.
But occasionally, because I'm impatient, I'll just pull out the heat embossing tool. It's honestly been a godsend because otherwise I used to just sit here and fan my paintings with a scrap sheet of paper. But now I just pull out that tool. Like if I don't have a lot of time to paint, which has happened more than not lately, yay, being an adult.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, a little bit lighter. So typically I have a couple of paintings here. When I share pictures of my process on like my Instagram stories, you can usually spot more than one that I'm working on. So yes, typically. But that's the best way to do it when you're have a bunch of smaller pieces and you're watercoloring. Yeah.
Like an assembly line of Polaroids.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we're going into the second layer now, it looks like.
Yes.
And are you thinking darker, more saturated? What's going on?
So sometimes I will go more saturated. Right now, I'm just adding more color. So it is saturating itself, but I haven't added any more paint to my mixes yet. Basically, I'm just building upon what's already there. Sometimes I kind of start breaking in, but I definitely want to keep the light shining through, so I won't completely remove all of these white spaces. And painting Milky Ways and galaxies, one of the most important things that I've discovered and I've learned is the importance of having white space. So having the white space makes it look like your piece is glowing. It makes it look like there's like an ethereal kind of quality to it. And that's why I love watercolors so much, is that everything is transparent. So you can see the layers that you've built upon. And I tried getting into acrylics, and I do have some acrylic paints. And it's really nice being able to just like completely paint over a mistake if you have it. Watercolors can be a little bit scarier in that way, which is why I actually did not like watercolors when I first started. I was like, this is the worst. Why don't my paintings look amazing? But I just kept going because I was super determined. But yeah, no, the transparent qualities of watercolor are fantastic now. So unfortunately, sometimes they don't hide mistakes. But usually I just try to incorporate a mistake into a piece. Doesn't always work out. And the pieces that I show on Instagram are often, the pieces that I really like. Every artist has a trove of pieces that never get shared. So remember never to compare yourself. And I find myself guilty of it too. Don't compare yourself to the artists that you see on Instagram. You start getting some imposter syndrome, and that's no fun. But just keep painting. So I just added in some Prussian blue. I'm switching to indigo here. And I will darken that up a little bit. This is such a deep and beautiful color. I love it. Drop in a little bit here and there.
Yeah, so now you're kind of slowly building in layers, but also like deepening those values as you're kind of adding in more layers on top of this. Yeah.
And you definitely, at least for this piece, I make the corners over here darker because our Milky Way is cutting across the sky this way.
Right.
For depth, I will occasionally drop in some darker color a little bit closer. But oh, here comes the cat. Hello, kitty. She's looking out the window next to me right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if she decides to climb on my desk.
That's too funny. If it's a welcome cameo at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of Zoom meetings, Zoom bombed or whatever by a cat.
Right.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah. So we got a really great question here from Patty. How wet is your paper now? Like, you dried that first layer. Did you do another layer of wet paint, of wet water? Wet water, just water, to kind of, yeah, water is wet, right? So that you could do more wet into wet, like painting techniques, or like what's going on here?
Yes. So I did do a whole new layer of clean water. So I pulled out clean water, and what I do is I start my clean water in the brightest parts, and then I work my way out, because watercolor has the tendency to lift just a little bit. So if I started my clean water over like in this corner where all that indigo is and tried to move this way, I would bring all the paint with me. So that's one thing that I learned from many times of doing that and wondering, why is my white space not white anymore? And yeah, so a whole new layer of clean water for the second layer, and then moving outward with your clean water. And then you can go in, once the whole thing is wet, it's probably, I don't have any puddles on the sheet, but you can see that it's kind of got a nice glossy sheen throughout the whole thing. That's what you're aiming for. If you throw on too much water, your paper will start to do some funky things.
Right.
But this is Arch's 140 pound 300 GSM, which is my favorite to paint on, simply because it can take and handle a lot of water and a lot of layers. So it's pretty tough stuff. If you use anything that's lighter or maybe not 100% cotton, you can create some amazing, beautiful paintings on that paper. But it is going to be a little bit more difficult to get your paint and water to cooperate in the way that you want.
Mm-hmm.
My suggestion to people is always, if you're gonna compromise on anything in terms of like quality, don't do it on paper. Do it on paints or brushes, because at least with watercolor paper is probably the, I guess, most important tool in my opinion, simply because it's basically your canvas and you don't want it to start getting funky.
Right. Yeah, good
Mm-hmm.
tips. Good to know.
Yeah.
And then Laurie has a really great follow-up question to this then. It's like why dry the paper then and wet it right after again when you're doing your second, third
Right.
layer? Hmm.
So I do it simply because I want to build the layers. If I added all of the colors and the intensity that I wanted on the first go with a watercolor galaxy, it won't work out, at least in my experience. It more or less just kind of looks like a blob, or
Right.
well, a bright colored blob, but it doesn't have that depth that you would want to go for it. So every single, and I'm not even exaggerating, but every single watercolor piece that has a galaxy of mine, at least, is multiple layers, and it's probably at least 3 layers. I probably average around 4 or 5 layers, but this one will probably be 3 or 4, most likely.
Cool.
But yeah, the layers help bring that depth, so that's why I let it dry, and then we add more paint onto it. I hope I
Right.
answered your question. It was kind of
Yeah,
a little
Lori,
bit of a
hopefully
tangent.
hopefully that gives you some insight on that. Um
Mm-hmm.
sure. Yeah. So we are now at almost 40 minutes as far
Oh,
as
really?
time goes. Yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah. This hour goes by so fast sometimes,
It
right?
does.
Um,
Okay, so I'm gonna mute myself again so I can try this really quick.
okay, that's fine.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and that's a really good point. Faiza, I hope I'm saying your name right. Working in layers, um, it may not seem it may seem counterintuitive, but if it's part of like a certain technique, it would be something that you could try and see if it works not just with your process, but like with what you're trying to achieve too. And so a lot of sky paintings, would start off like wet on wet and then building layers on top and having that like blend of colors, having really soft edges and things like that. And then having harder edges and like more foreground elements built on top of that too. So yeah, watercolor is really interesting and fascinating in that way. Patty, great. Thank you. Okay, great. I'm glad I pronounced it sort of okay. um, yeah, we got some really great feel goods here in the chat. Patty says she just signed up for your workshop, Rachel. So this is
Oh,
fantastic.
that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be more skyscapes, as I mentioned earlier. So
Yes.
it'll be fun. More sky paintings and more similar
I'm
techniques, I
thinking
imagine.
another kind of Milky Way galaxy, and then at least a sunset, and maybe if there's time, a misty mountain kind of landscape.
Wow, it's gonna
But
be jam packed.
yes, if we can manage it. But this one's taking longer than I thought too. So I'm kind of speeding through the third and final layer for the sky here.
Yeah, and Laurie, your question is very timely. Who asked how many layers do you usually do? And you mentioned you usually do about 4 or 5, right? Um,
Typically.
Typically, yeah. And the drying, like using your heat gun, drying that previous layer and then adding that other layer on top, is that normally the case when you go to the next layer?
Yes. So simply I just use the heat gun and add the next layer. And you can see that I'm starting light colors and I'll move to dark. And that's pretty much the same for every single layer. It's the same process over and over. So I just added in a little bit of more of the yellow ochre. And now I'm moving to some phthalo turquoise. And now at this point, I am going to start to darken and deepen the colors. So yeah, that's pretty good. Because I want to build in more vibrancy and a little bit of texture now. I like it when the paint kind of blooms and spreads out like that. Gives it more of like a I don't know, it adds more texture to the piece. So that's typically what I like to do. But I'm moving quick now because I didn't realize that we were like at 40 minutes. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, like when you're having fun, and
I
just having
am.
fun
I'm talking a
talking.
lot.
Yeah. um, we got a question here. How do you keep your colors from getting muddy?
Good question. So I could launch into something about color theory, but I don't know that much about color theory. So I typically choose colors that are near each other on the color wheel. That certainly helps. Like if I were trying to mix yellow and purple here, there would probably be some muddy
Yeah.
browns.
Right.
Because the nature of these galaxy paintings is you are mixing all over. Like my brush is dancing
Hmm.
all over this page. So, and when I'm dropping in color here, like I just did, I don't really, mix it up and mix it in.
Mm.
I
You don't
simply,
like rub it into the paper, essentially.
right,
Hmm.
basically. So I'm kind of just dropping some color and moving off. That certainly helps. Um, but yeah, I typically try to choose colors that play nice when they're mixed together. So that's typically what I do. Um, Having clean water and clean colors in your palette certainly helps.
Hmm.
Actually, it's funny that you say that because my yellow ochre started to get a little bit muddy here because it must have interacted with some blue somewhere. But I had to keep going in for clean stuff from my actual palette. But sometimes the muddiness just happens. When it happens, I just go with it. But there we go. All right, I'm gonna dry this again really quick so we can move on to the mountains. So I will disappear for a second.
Okay. All right. Um, okay. So while we're waiting for Rachel to dry, Faiza, I'm sorry. I don't know why it's not loading. It could be possible the website itself is just being blocked where you're at. You can try just typing in etyourstudio.com or etyourlab.com, just like plain like that, and see if just the home page will even pop up for you. Um, so I do apologize that you're having trouble with those links. But yeah, just see if you can maybe do the actual like homepage website and then kind of search for Rachel. If you search for her name and search the upcoming classes, hopefully you'll be able to find that. And Patty, I'll ask if she uses salt at all here in a bit.
All right, and we're back.
And we're back. Okay, so do you use salt at all in your work, Rachel?
Occasionally, it's funny you say that. I have a little thing of salt right here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like table salt or is it like special magic salt?
No, it's sea salt.
Okay.
So an upgrade from regular table salt, I guess.
Okay, yeah. Are they like chunky or like I guess again like not to go down the rabbit hole here because I want you to finish your work your painting but like the size or granulate or the chunkiness of the salt have an effect on how that texture works in watercolors?
I believe so. Yes, I haven't used like table salt, so I don't really quite know how that would work compared to the sea salt, which is like I guess a little bit fatter.
Hmm.
And I haven't used salt lately. It's actually funny that you say that because now I kind of want to. Um, I won't do it in this piece, but that adds some really cool textures too. Um, I just haven't done that in a while.
When would you
Dang, you got
use
me thinking
salt?
about it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question, Patty. But when would you use salt then? Like, for what kind of painting?
So I would use it for a watercolor galaxy, and I have in the past. And when
Okay.
I use it, it's usually towards the last layer. So the layer that I just dried, I would be dropping it on then.
Okay.
And I would drop it typically in the lightest color of my piece, because I think when you look at, a night sky and you see the Milky Way, if you've gotten the chance to, You can see all those really crazy, funky space textures. And when I think of salt and what it does to watercolor, I think of that in the sky.
Awesome. That's really,
Yeah.
really interesting to note. Do you let that air dry or do you use your heat gun then with the salt?
When I use salt, I typically let it air dry simply because then I think the salt gets more time to kind of like drag the water in. So I typically don't use my heat gun. And when the salt is dry and I'm using my heat gun, it'll blow it around. So I don't really want to do that and
Yeah,
get
don't do
salt
that.
all over.
Make a mess.
Yeah. Because when you don't want salt on a particular watercolor piece and all of a sudden like one single grain of salt finds its way on, it's just kind of ruins your day.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
so Chris just asked, the color that you just laid in for your mountains, what color
Mhm.
was that?
That is neutral tint. So typically, and sometimes I just felt like using neutral tint tonight. I was in a neutral tint kind of mood. But sometimes I usually just use indigo. I try to keep like, I try to tie in something about the sky with my foreground.
Right.
I'm not sure why. I'm sure there's an actual reason for that, like composition why. I just think it looks nice. So,
We could even go so far as to say it's just color harmony, making sure that
uh,
colors
yep,
exist in
yep,
all
yep.
parts of your painting. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Color
We'll
harmony. Good
we'll
one.
go with that color harmony or unified look. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what I'm doing right now, I'm prepping. This is kind of still drying. I am prepping my stars. So I've got this really, really crusty bottle of Dr. F.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, which is basically like a white acrylic ink, I believe. So I use that. I go in with a kind of throwaway brush. This is pretty cheap. You can see I've used it for stars because it's covered in little white speckles. But I'll go in, I dip a little bit of that, bring it out, drop it in the cap, and then I drop like a single drop of water because otherwise you're not going to be able to get stars on your piece. Give it a little mix. And then, before I do that too, I try to cover up whatever I don't want stars on.
Yeah. So
Because
oh
this
yeah, it'll
gets a little messy.
right.
Yes. I'll get it
Nice.
nice and saturated, and then grab a pencil. So a lot of people like to use like a toothbrush.
Hmm.
Um,
To
I
get the
don't like to
splatters.
get
Yeah.
I don't like to get my finger all kind of gross when you're kind of like doing that with the toothbrush. So grab my pencil,
Yeah.
grab my paintbrush, and just tap. Ooh.
Very nice.
Oh yes, and this goes random. Like I've gotten paint in my eye. I've gotten paint. Like my phone that I'm using to record right now, it's gonna have paint all over the back of it. But what you do
Occupational hazard as an artist.
exactly.
Occupational hazard. Um, yeah, that's a really great technique. Is this a synthetic cheapy brush that you use for this? I find
Yeah.
the hair of the brush can determine how well it'll splatter as well.
Oh yes, this is just a cheap. Probably came in a packet of like a ton of other brushes, like from Michaels or whatever craft store you got. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to be fancy because all you're doing is, and see, this is kind of cotton. Doesn't have a really great point anymore,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is fine because I don't need it to create any points or anything. So that's what you do, and I don't even clean it that well, to be honest. You can see that there's like a cake of my white acrylic ink. But
Yeah.
this is literally all I use my brush for. You
Yeah.
can
It's a
see I've got more of
dedicated
it
brush
here.
for splatters and
Oh
white,
yeah.
basically. White. Yeah.
And then to add some variation, I will get a white gel pen,
Hmm.
which is this is just like a jelly roll pen. I
Hmm.
think I got it from my local craft store. Make sure it's working. There we go. Take that away. And then I add in some larger stars, just because not all the stars in the sky are little bitty ones. Add some of different sizes. And then in a moment, how's this doing? Oh, it's drying up. Okay, good. And this is just random. Sometimes they're closer together, sometimes they're far apart. Yeah. And occasionally I will add, well, why not? We're going to do it. We're going to do a shooting star. So what I do is do like a little dot, and then you have to move really quick and fling it across the paper. Otherwise you don't get like, I don't know, the shape of it quite right. So added my dot and then just shoot across. So there's one. Usually do another one. Oh, he's not falling as fast, but that's fine.
That's so fun. Oh my gosh.
Yes. So that's why I really like these white pens.
Mhm.
They're not necessary, but it does make it a little bit easier because you can actually, draw it instead of paint it.
Right.
Whoa, I'm throwing my brushes. Oof. But what I will also do, this is a size 2 Princeton Glacier. It's probably another one of the brushes that I use the most.
Mhm.
And usually I will use even like a brush that has a smaller and pointier tip, but this brush is actually damaged just enough where there's a teeny tiny little tip. See, not all damaged brushes have to go and be of no use, because this is actually one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah, no, there's definitely
So
a use for old
yeah,
brushes. There's a good amount of life to them.
yes, and I use that little damaged tip to get a really skinny, um,
Like a
I don't know what you call this,
star
kind of
glow.
star glow twinkle.
Twinkle. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure
that's what
there's
we're
a
going for.
technical term for this. If someone knows in the chat, you can type it in the chat. But we'll go with
Yeah,
twinkle, twinkling little stars.
yes. So that's
So
when I'll start to add in some of those.
okay, so these are kind of like cherry on top details we're kind of adding
Yeah.
in, right? Are you
Yes,
doing any more to the mountains or like is
I
that just one
will.
layer? Okay.
So I'll add in, and I'm basically just doing this while this dries,
I see. I see.
but I'll probably add in like one layer of pine trees since that might be all the time that we have.
Hmm.
Um, in this other piece in our reference photo, you can see I've done more layers. And you honestly, if you guys are painting along, do as many layers as you want.
Yeah,
The
so you've
more
got like
layers,
depth there. Yeah.
yeah, the more depth.
Hmm.
But I'm feeling the time crunch a little bit, so I'm just
Yeah, I don't want to make you feel rushed. So if we need to go a little
no.
over time, we can. But
Okay.
yeah, we got about like 8 minutes though, so
Oh, sure.
I think that's
We're good.
plenty. Yeah, yeah, to get a couple more layers in this painting here.
Yes.
Oh, someone in the chat said sparkle, so we can definitely use that word as well.
Sparkle. That
Sparkle
works too.
stars. Got it.
And a key to making those sparkles or twinkles, whatever word you want to use, a
Hmm.
little bit more organic is don't make them all the same size. So I know I just did that over there, but that's because I wasn't thinking. Um, but if you use basically kind of don't make them symmetrical, it makes it a little bit more organic. Not a lot of things in nature are symmetrical. So don't beat yourself up if it doesn't look perfect,
Hmm.
essentially. Perfection in nature doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's a good mantra to go by for sure.
So now I'm going into some neutral tint again. And this is nice and dark because we're going into our foreground. And your foreground is always going to be like the deepest in color. You know, like when you look at mountains that are really far away, how they're
Yeah,
all
yeah.
like misty and blue and kind of
Hmm.
drowned out. But as you get closer, the pine trees that you're going to see are a lot more saturated. And in
Right.
this case, it's nighttime, so these are silhouettes. But and all I'm doing is just drawing a stick straight up and just doing the blob technique and making it into a tree shape essentially. You can do fancier like pine trees and do all of the like branches individually, but I typically find myself edging towards the blob technique simply because they do look organic to a certain extent, but they're faster. Yeah, simple as that.
Simple as that. We got a great question here. Do you ever use masking fluid, Rachel?
I do, not very often, um, because the pieces that I usually do don't involve masking fluid, but I have
Hmm.
actually used masking fluid um, as like the stars before. So I sprinkled the masking fluid on and then painted the piece. And that was kind of cool. I did like it, but it was like more of a hassle than I wanted. So I haven't done it since. But I do occasionally use masking fluid. I think the piece that I used it most recently was, I want to say it was a seascape, and I used masking fluid on like the white part of the wave. I think that was very helpful. Keeping that white space was very important because it's the spray of the wave. So yeah, but good question.
Yeah. It does make you think, like, when you would, the application for the masking fluid, like what situation would you, want to use it
Yeah.
for?
Sometimes I use it when I'm doing my galaxy silhouettes. I will put it in places that are like, for example, if it's really, really important that I don't, paint outside the lines that I've drawn for myself, I'll use it there. But that's like as a failsafe, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
We got some beautiful comments here. We got a number of people signing up for your mini workshop, so that's
Aw,
awesome.
that's
Uh,
awesome. Thanks, guys. I can't wait to paint with you all again. This is so much
yeah,
fun.
it's been a lot of fun. You guys are such a fun crowd here today, um, and yes, this will be permanently on our YouTube channel for as long as Edgar decides to. So
Wow.
if you need to rewatch this, or if you have to leave a little bit earlier, yeah, this will still be here for you guys to rewatch later on in the future.
Never been permanently on YouTube before. This is
Uh,
crazy.
there you go. Here's your
Actually,
first.
there is a YouTube, and I have actually never been able to find this, but way back in middle school, I did Odyssey of the Mind, which is like this thing in the US where it's like a competition that you do with a group.
Oh.
And one of the things you can do is like create a skit. And one of our skits is somewhere on YouTube, in the depth of YouTube, of little fifth grade
Oh
Rachel
my goodness.
doing something.
Yeah, we'll have to
So,
really excavate that.
oh
See.
God,
Oh
I don't think
man.
I want to see that.
Okay, yeah, let's not. If you happen to find it, don't tell Rachel.
Don't tell me where it is. No,
Don't tell her.
I don't even know what the name of it is. So who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? Okay, great. So we're close to our time here. We'll give
All right,
Rachel about 5 minutes to wrap up. So we'll go like a couple minutes over the hour.
sure.
So if you guys have any other questions that you would like to have Rachel answer, this would be the time to do it. I'll post a link one more time here in her in the chat for her mini workshop. And that'd be great to see many of you there. It is maximum to 300 people, I believe. I don't think I've
Wow.
ever hosted that huge of a group, but surprise me. I am looking forward to
Yeah.
where I do. So yeah, so again, we'll go deeper into painting skies in the Polaroid frame format, and um, and of course, Rachel have more time to go more into layering and how all that is working. Um, okay, so I'm not seeing anything new pop up, but there could be a lag. But right here with you, Rachel, as
Awesome.
you're wrapping up here, so you're just putting in this layer of trees in the same value, the same kind of amount of
Yes.
saturation of pigment. Yeah.
Yep. This is basically like probably the most saturated I could get that neutral tint. Just to really, because watercolors are transparent, you
Hmm.
want this to pop. So
Yeah.
absolutely going all in with that pigment. And the process of painting trees is pretty random,
Hmm.
kind of methodical in a way though, but the branches are random,
Yeah.
one straight stick up the middle, branches. That's a tree.
And
It's
that's
the
it.
definition
Just
of a tree.
fan it out. Just make sure you got that taper. That's how, there's a taper to the shape there. A
Oh
lot of
yeah.
comments about your trees, like very nice silhouettes and
Aw,
people saying that they love
thanks
your
guys.
trees.
Thank you. So we've come to the end, and this is probably my favorite part of the painting,
Ooh.
is taking off the tape.
Oh my gosh, the satisfaction of peeling
Yes.
off that tape.
So usually I would wait until these couple of trees right here are kind of they're almost dry. Usually I
Mhm.
would wait until they are, but I'll just be extra careful. How about that?
Does it pull
Oh.
the paint if you're too quick with the tape pull?
No, I might smudge it.
Oh,
And
okay. Yeah.
then we don't get a really clean and crisp line, but so far so
Yeah.
good.
So far, so good.
Yes. This is always definitely the most satisfying part. We've got wet paint on the tape, but that's okay because it's not on the paper. My
Yeah.
cat also tries to steal these tape balls.
Oh my gosh,
She'll
everything is a toy to them. Cats.
honestly,
Do you,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Any
okay.
cat owner understands.
Any cat, yes. I have three myself, and spend money on getting really cool, fancy toys, and they play with tape. They play
They
with like
literally
the
play with
box.
trash. That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, Margot just asked, she said, "Thank you for a fun and informative demo. Is it okay to use this idea for a homemade Christmas card?" I
Of
mean,
course.
yeah, go for
Thank you
it.
for asking.
Yeah, like this, there's so many variations to this type of like scenery. Like, go for it. It's
Yeah.
someone really is gonna own the Milky Way. you know.
Yes, exactly. I do not have a patent on the Milky Way sky.
Okay. All right. So there you go.
Yes.
Yes. And if you do anything that's inspired by Rachel, please tag us on Instagram. Share
Yeah,
it
I
on
want to see it if
Instagram.
you guys do anything
Yeah. If you have your
from this
social
workshop.
media.
I would love to see what you create.
For real. For real. Yeah. So I'll
We can see the differences here, our reference, and then today's piece. Ooh.
awesome. And look how different it is. It's like the same concept, but like look, you got two different images, like right here.
Mm-hmm. No painting is ever the same. Even if
Right.
you're like, I was kind of trying to replicate this one, but at the same time, not trying very hard if it
Mhm.
didn't look the same. But either
Mhm.
way, you always get differences.
Yeah, yeah, and they're both like perfect images. They're both great for
Aw.
what they serve. So, yeah, and I got a beautiful like a row of comments here. So, Rachel, when you get a chance to take a look at the recording, take a look at the chat. It's all beautiful.
Aw.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining us again. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up here. We are a little over time, so I'm gonna be real quick with the wrapping up. Again, one more time, there's the link to Rachel's May's mini workshop, May 8th, $6, $6 US, and we hope to see you all there. More sky paintings. And
I actually
yeah.
have, wait, hold on. I'm going to disappear for a second because I actually have the Polaroid paintings that we're going to use as references. Yeah, here
Oh,
they are.
yeah, let's do it. Here we
Not
go.
the same colors. Well, almost the same colors, but
Mhm.
these guys.
Ooh, so there will be some reds this time.
Yes.
Absolutely. So if you're really itching to use some reds and purples, this would be the workshop to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So this was super enjoyable. Thank you guys so much for joining us, all 100 of you. It's been super great to talk with you guys in the chat here and watching Rachel do her fun paintings here, the Polaroids. And there it is one more time in the chat, the link to her mini workshop. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. We do live demos every day, so please subscribe and turn on your notifications. Um, and I mentioned earlier the feedback form. If you really enjoyed watching what we did today, please fill out the feedback form and find Rachel's live demo, and then just let me and Rachel know how we did, or if you want to see something different, or whatever thoughts and feedbacks that you have. Please fill that out and let us know what we got there. And I believe that's it. So yeah, tag us on Instagram, tag Proxime Artistry. That is Rachel's handle. I don't think I posted that in the chat at all, so I'll do that real quick. I just got so excited talking to you.
Aw.
Yeah. And then and yeah, use the hashtag at your studio. And that way we'll be able to find your work and give you some love on that. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna let you guys go. Thank you again so much for spending your Friday afternoon here if you're in the States with us. Please have a good, wonderful rest of your weekend. I'll see you guys all soon. Rachel, I'll be hopefully I'll be your host for your mini workshop. So it'll be a
I
lot
would
of
be
fun.
honored.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody. Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you guys.
see you all next time. Bye bye.
Bye.